afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time it is wherever you are. This is my fourth attempt at a stream. Um, and before we get started today, I wanted to just mention that YouTube today, YouTube, I'm looking at YouTube, and so I'm saying YouTube, Unity today has announced an update on their saga of the runtime fee, which we discussed at some length last week. And the long and the short of it is that it's actually a pretty good change. I think the end result is going to make a lot of people in the community quite happy. I think it's a reasonably fair and balanced result, but I still question why we had to go through all of the pain and angst to get here. So quickly take a look at what the message says from Mark Witten, the lead of Unity Create. And he firstly starts with an apology, and then follows that up with that they should have communicated more with the community before releasing it. The goal was to continue to support the engine, and that seemed to be evident that they're worried about the viability, commercial viability of the engine long term. The big changes is that they've changed Unity Personal, that it'll be always free and there's no runtime fee for games built on Unity Personal. The cap for Unity Personal will increase from $100,000 to $200,000, and you will no longer be required to use the Made with Unity splash screen. Now, small clarification, which I don't think is in this post, is that this applies to games built with Unity 2023 and later, and that implies that you will then be on a version that is eligible for runtime fees should your revenue exceed the thresholds for runtime fees. Now, essentially, once you reach the $200,000 revenue mark, you have to upgrade to Unity Pro or Unity Enterprise. And then once you reach $100 million in revenue and 100 million installs, which installs, I think they've changed the wording on that a little bit. At that point, you become eligible for a runtime fee. And this is no longer retroactive. It's only from the next LTS version, which will be 2023 LTS. And then that fee will be capped at a 2.5% revenue share as the maximum. So in other words, you can either choose to pay the 2.5%, or you can report your sales figures and pay a runtime fee on those sales figures up to a maximum number of 2.5%. They are right at this very moment having a fireside chat with Jason Wyman, which I'll catch the rebroadcast, or I'll catch the recording of that a bit later. Anyway, long story short, I think it's simplified. It's fairly straightforward. You kind of know where you stand with where you are today, and you know where you stand if you upgrade to a later version in the future. Mobile games are probably the most affected in that at some point they will have to upgrade if they want their games to remain compatible with newer versions of iOS and Android. So that's the story. Anyway, with that said, I am not going to change my mind about the switch over to Unreal. And so here's our Unreal editor. And what we're going to try and do today is very simple, because I'm a complete noob and I have no idea what I'm doing. I've watched 2 or 3 videos, and I am now going to attempt to do that. I'm just going to create an empty scene. So when I start with an empty project, I've played with some of the starter projects, and they're really great because they give you quite a lot of things out of the box, working controllers, and a few other nice things. So that's actually fantastic. But I've always liked building things and making my own way in things. And so I'm probably going to stub my toe a few times. And just at this point, try and build a little empty scene, put a character of some sorts down, and then get a controller working. And I'm kind of leaning towards a bit of a top-down, third-person, simple walk-around puzzle, solve a few puzzles, shoot at a few things kind of idea. That's sort of the rough idea. I don't have much more of a game design. I've been scratching my head a little bit about a game design. I also don't want to invest too much into building and designing another game, considering that I am working on several projects already. So This is really just to get my feet wet and get me started on some Unity. I keep on saying Unity. One day I'll get it right. Some Unreal Engine things. All right, let's see how that goes. So I've pretty much set up everything. I've got a blank project there waiting, and where it needs to go, and I'm just going to call it my first Unreal game, and that's very Fisher-Price naming, but developers, we're not good at naming things. One thing while the editor is loading that I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of is the fact that you have to run the editor from within the Epic Game Launcher. And I guess it's similar. I mean, Unity has the Unity Launcher, which is a similar sort of idea, except that Unity has no games that's run and not a game store, etc., from within the launcher. But anyway, that's just a little observation. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on that idea. I gave it some thought. I'm going to probably start with Blueprint based development, really just because I don't know what I should do with new plugins, so I'm just going to ignore it for now. When I thought about it, my C++ is extremely rusty. I haven't used C++ in any real capacity for quite some time, and so I don't want to spend too much time stubbing my toes and banging my head against both C++ syntax and an unfamiliar API. So I'm going to see how the how Unreal's blueprints serve me. I think they are pretty powerful and they do quite a good job. I'm just trying to get closer to my landscape. I'm not good at navigating this environment just yet. Maybe I can double click a object to bring me closer to it. Okay, there we go. It feels like am I closer, or did I now just blow up my viewport? I have no idea. Scrolling out does not seem to do much. No, I don't want to select anything. I just want to look around. Okay. All right, so there is the terrain, which means that I think it's actually it's a corner, right? That's right. Okay, so the terrain is starting at a corner. It's not starting in the middle. And so the origin of this terrain is underneath this corner. So when you double click at that, it does actually do what I expected it would. It focuses you on the point, or the origin point of that object, but the actual point of that origin of the object is quite far. Nope, that doesn't work. So we're just using a bit of a fly camera to get to a starting point. Okay, now I think the first thing is that we already have a landscape. So even when you start with an empty project, it kind of gives you a empty landscape to start in. I have no idea how detailed or anything this landscape is. It seems it's 127 by 127 with a 2x2 sub. What is that? Let me just get the mouse over there and we can expand this a little bit. 2x2 subsections and 1x1 resolution. I did see a little tutorial which recommended you make this 2x2. I don't think this is something you can change afterwards, and can kind of see that it makes a pretty large environment already, and as is evidenced by the long flight time across this terrain. Hopefully I don't have to take too long to get to the end. Maybe I should have used one of the projects that has so we should maybe just use one of the projects that has the little gym set up in it. As I said, it's quite nice. It's got some fairly good starting out points. Okay, we want to take a look at the content drawer and see what starter content there is. I've selected the starter content. There's some starter blueprints for effects, for assets. Let's take a look. What have we got? Skybox. I think we've already got a skybox in effect. Static mesh arrows. That could be useful. No idea what that is. LUT is sort of a color setup for lights. Interesting, interesting. Okay, we've got some. What that is, we've got some pre-built maps. It seems we've got a lot of materials. That's nice. We can certainly use those. Some pre-built particles. Props. What else have we got in props? Okay, we've got some chairs and a statue, so we can place some objects in the world. And we've got some shapes, and I guess the shapes are all the common shapes that you would expect to find in an engine of this kind. What I don't see are any characters. Let's see if there's anything under collections. Okay, so there's nothing under collections. Right, so the little tutorial that I watched, which was ironically my first game, I think, used the assets from the Game Jam starter pack for some of its content. I'll take a look. We've got some architecture. We've got a wall. We've got a wall window. We've got a floor. I know there's a shortcut key that'll take you to the ground. I do not know what that key is. I just want to get a little closer to the ground so that I can see what's going on here. Okay, so first things first, somewhere here there's a mode button. Okay, so the mode button allows us to choose whether we're in landscape mode or selection mode. And let's see, what does that look like? Okay, so we've got a brush, total strength, brush size. We can make the brush a little smaller, I guess. And we can zoom out a little bit, just so that I can see what I'm doing here. And oops, wrong button. Let's use the oopsie. Oh, ooh. Okay, let's use. That's very strong. Still very strong. Okay. I wonder if I can undo. Ooh, yes, you can. Okay. All right, let's do that a bit. And let's. Ooh, yes, still too strong there. There we go. Here we go. Now we're getting something going. All right. Let's see. So you can actually create quite deep trenches. Yeah, it's still very strong. Okay. That's interesting. And we can also do interesting things with brushes. Okay, so we can raise that a bit. That's interesting. And so terrain sculpting is definitely not one of my strengths. So excuse me while it's horrible. There. And maybe at some point we'll play a bit more with terrains and figure out how to do it properly and well. Anyway, there we go. We've got a bit of a terrain and we can probably do something with that. Let's go back to selection mode and see what that actually looks like. How close do you get? Okay, so when you get to there, that's quite close. Okay, so there's a reasonable amount of space for us to fiddle around in. I'm not going to try and paint anything right now. And for the sake of simplicity and because I don't want to try and also figure out how to import content, I am going to use just primitive shapes for pretty much everything. Where did we see those primitive shapes? There they are, shapes. Okay, so good old capsule for our player. I think there's a button for, I don't know, there's a button to put it on the ground. Here we go. Okay, which I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Okay, let's just undo that. Okay, so we need to add a, let's see if we can, that creates a folder. We need to add an actor. So does that allow us to add an actor? That's a character, and that's a pawn. Okay. So that's interesting differentiators between them. Character is a pawn that includes the ability to walk around. A pawn is an actor that can be possessed. So I suppose a pawn is what you would use if you were building some form of RTS, and all of your RTS units would be pawns. I guess, something like that. And let's try creating a character and let's see what that does. Okay, so there's our character. Yes, that looks correct. It's got the capsule that we expected to see. It looks pretty big though, right? It does look pretty big unless I'm very much mistaken. So to this, we are going to let's add this capsule. I don't know if it works like that. Nope, it does not work like that. Let's try and add it in there. Nope, also doesn't work like that. All right, there we go. Okay, and if we put the capsule just in the world, and we drag it, static shape, okay, that's static, okay. Alright, so how do we make a character actually behave like a pawn? There is a player start. Oh, well, that's exciting. That is exciting. Okay, let's just undo a bunch of things. Delete that character. And delete all the landscape editing. There we go. Back to 0. Alright, let's go to the player start. There we go, with our player start. So now let's do that landscaping stuff. I feel like a gardener when I say landscaping. Let's do some of that. Just make the brush a bit smaller. Not very big. Okay. And we can do that. And a bit of that. Alright. Whatever. Doesn't really matter all that much, I guess. Let's go to our selection mode. Go back to our player start. Okay, now we want to add a character, right? Okay, well, let's see what happens if we press play. And we have, oh, we can look around No, WASD works. Ah, I think I understand. So that character is actually a first person character. Okay, that makes sense. All right, that makes sense. Okay, so we don't really. I know there's a button to snap to ground, just so that you can kind of figure that out. But character is not what we want. So let's just remove that. I'm moving it around. It's just done. Okay. So the character is not what we want. What we want is, in fact, a pawn. And I'm assuming that's what we want. Let's see. Is it Control Alt P? What is the play? Alt P. Alt P. Okay, we can look around. Go on zoom. Left and right looks around. Without a mouse hold, it also looks around. WASD. Still fly camera. Okay, so we're still on a fly camera, which means that I have no idea what we've actually done. Okay, so it seems like we're missing something. Now this is where Google is your friend, because I seem to recall how to do this, but I just can't quite recall how to do this. First, Unity. First, Unreal. Silly human. I think it's that one. I'm sure that the sound is going to come through, because I actually don't know what I'm doing, and hopefully it at least comes through to me. Yes, it is there. Okay, great. Okay, I'm just going to see what. So, a question for the people listening in: can you hear the desktop, or am I playing the music just for myself? I switched off desktop audio, so let me switch on the desktop audio.
For example, this one is color we can change.
Is that coming through?
When we hit apply, we can see
So
now
and
and
some materials
here, and this is enough for us. For our little purpose, back to the crate by opening up the static mesh. Because there we can check Nena like a very lovely scene.
Okay,
but now let's switch gears and begin with the gameplay. Before we start, let's press play and see what happens. So besides our crates falling to the ground, we can find some yellow colored actors in our outliner. Many of them are default actors that get automatically spawned, like for example the game mode or found in our scene, but we also need a brain. In Unreal terms defined here, so let's briefly change that to our valley. And now we want to make an own game mode, an own pawn, and an own player controller. So let's create a new folder and name that one framework. In there, we want to create a new blueprint class. We worked only with an actor before, but blueprints can be made out of many different classes. When we open up an actor in our classes, you will find that our crate is a child of an actor. And a character is a child of a pawn, which means they inherit functionality from their parent. But we will based on the game mode base and name this one BP game mode for now. Next, we need a character. character is based on a pawn and comes with built-in functionality we will use. We will name this one BP bot. So imagine this being the body that runs around in our scene, but we also need a brain. In Unreal terms, that is the controller. We will need a player controller.
Okay. Okay, so let's test that out and see. What we are doing. Okay, let's move the pawn. Let's just Control Z it out of the way. Control Z, Control Z. Bit. Okay. Highlight that. And content drawer. Our game. Okay. All right. So let's make a folder for our stuff. Come on, don't be so dark that you can't make a folder. There's folder. Okay, see. Okay. And there we're going to, let's just basically follow the tutorial. We want to create a game mode. There we go. Character. I'll call it character. And a control. Oh, goody. I've got no idea how this is going to work. Okay, I think I want. Nope. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. That seems a bit arbitrary. It does not want to lock itself in place. Okay, I'll play with windows and window layout a bit. I'm assuming. Do I put that in the scene? Do I put that in the scene? No, I do not put that in the scene. That is what he was doing in the game settings, which I need to just go and take a quick look at again. Let's quickly just see.
But we will also look into an AI controller later. We name this simple one BP player controller.
Go faster.
Now we have to tie all the three things together and add it to our level. When we open up the game mode, you can see it looks like a normal actor blueprint. We could even have logic here the game mode should take care of. But we will only override some default classes here. First, let's add our player controller here. So instead of the default one, we want to use our BP player controller. It also spawns the default pawn class, and our BP bot is a character that's based on a pawn, so we can add that here. So let's save that and close it. Now we have to tell our game to use our own game mode. We could add it to the specifics of this level in the world settings if we would have different game modes for different maps, but here we...
Okay, so let's go take a look at that. I really need to keep this out. Okay, so our game mode. Oh, go on. Oh, there we go. It's taking it slower than I thought it would be. Don't worry about that right now. Okay, player controller. Let's use that. Default pawn class is our character. Okay. Seems happy with that. And in the project settings, maps and modes, default game mode, game mode. Okay. No idea what that is going to do. Let's take a look and see what that does. Alright, now we don't, I think, have any things happening. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. I feel very dumb right now. Hopefully we'll get better at this.
Just want to add it as a default for all maps, so we do it in the project settings. And here you can see there's a BP bot and the character now. Next, we need to define where our character should be spawned in the world. We use the player start actor. The game mode will use it automatically when it's in the scene. This blue arrow shows us the direction the character will be orientated when spawned. When we use the end key, it will be placed on the ground. So let's find a nice spot to start from.
So did he say end key? This is one of the things that I was struggling with earlier. Let's take a look at our player start. There's our player start. What is the axis? Okay, so blue here is Z. Okay, so if we just drag it up and say end. Okay, so the end key brings you to the ground. Okay, that's good. Good to know.
When we now hit play, we will find ourselves at that location. With this button, we can detach from the player controller to get back to the editor controls while the game is even running. And when we now look in the outliner, we can find our BP bot and other blueprints we made. So now we have our basics set up and can move to the camera. We can have the camera in many different places, like in the controller, but we will add it to the bot itself. When we open up the character and take a look in the viewport, we will find different components, like the capsule for collision and movement, or the arrow component that shows us a forward direction.
Okay. Alright, I vaguely recall how to do this, so let's try and do it ourselves first. We're going to go and edit the character. And I'm wondering if I shouldn't at some point let's make this a bit bigger. Drop assets here to add a component. Okay, so where can we find some assets? Pardon me. Default assets. Add a new graph. Okay, there, add. Right, camera. I'm using camera for now. And I remember that this spring arm exists. So this is very similar to Unity's let's put that. Nope. To there. Okay. Right, there we go. So this is similar to the Unity Cinemachine controls. Okay, I need to see what I'm doing. Oh no, that's, we don't want to roll it like that. Ah, there we go, green is maybe there's a better way to do this, or an easier way to do this. Now, let me compile it. And think that's quite what we had in mind. Let's minimize that, play that, and let's just attach. Okay, it's not great, but that'll have to do for now, I guess. We were saying that we should try and save this level. Create a folder, levels, and let's just call it level 0. Want a better name. Okay, let's edit this actor some more. I wonder if with the camera you can't do the same as you do in Cinemachine, where you can tell it to look at something specific. Oh, that's the camera mesh. It feels like it's going to be almost a follow camera if you set that. What else can we set on here? Okay, so we're going to have to play a little bit more with camera settings, and I think the video does go into that in a bit more detail, but I don't want us to get stuck on that. We do need to add something so that we can actually see our player. So do we have a capsule? No, that's a collider. Okay, so it doesn't look like you can add a static mesh capsule on or a cylinder from here. I wonder if you can add one from the content drawer. Let's see if you can add one from the content drawer. No, we don't want that to live underneath. Oh no, everything is underneath everything. That's a bit of a mess. Let's see if we can try that again. It's interesting. It puts the camera, puts that underneath that. That's not really wanted. It also doesn't seem to. Okay. Yeah, that's not happy. Let's see if Andre can help us understand why we're dumb.
And then there is a skeletal mesh component that we will use later. And the character movement component that will help.
I think I understand. So in the skeletal mesh component, So I don't think it really likes you not having any kind of content. So let's see if we can import some content from somewhere. Let's go take a look. And I think there's some content in here that we might be able to use. Nothing there. Nope. Let's see, meshes. Where would we say? Unless no items there. Hmm. No, I'll leave it on. Rugby toys, rocket. Hmm. Nope, nothing in there that we can import. Let's see. Okay, so starter content. So that's already in here. Basic mesh shapes, some sample blueprints, static mesh props. This is already in here, so adding that would not help. Well, what about just taking something from our vault and seeing whether we can use some stuff from the vault. So Unreal's asset store, very similar to Unity. There's a fair amount of activity and quite a lot of decently looking free assets. At first glance, I kind of feel like um, the assets are more expensive than the Unity Asset Store assets, but maybe that's just because I'm not quite sure why this is coming up in rands. My Unity Asset Store in dollars. Why is it not showing me my vault? I would not know who I am. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's just kind of like showing stuff again in the marketplace, but not actually showing me the vault. It is weird. Wonder if you can add directly from your let's see, no, so that just is basically the same. Um, collections, I think, is add a collection. Local collection, okay. And a feature or no, that's also local. So how does one add content from the asset store? I feel rather dumb right now. Hmm. Okay, I think let's take a moment and figure out how we get an actual character in here. So rather than watch me do that, I'm going to take a moment and then I'll resume, or I suppose it'll be the next stream in a short while.